Welcome to the Athletic Performance Podcast, a conversation for all things performance related. I'm your host, Ryan Patrick, and today we're going to do a deep dive on everything speed, power, and strength. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the Athletic Performance Podcast. It's good to be with you today. I'm your host, Ryan Patrick. We have been on hiatus since roughly last October. I had some things come up with the mentorship that I was working on in the speed development world, and so that took a lot of my time and attention. But I have several amazing guests planned for you, and we are going to get back into the rhythm. So today's guest is Mike Kozak. You can expect some updates soon from David Gray. Lance Brooks and I are recording a podcast tonight, so lots of awesome content that is for sure coming your way very soon. So hope to see you around more. But today's conversation started from a post that I made regarding Groucho running. And if you're not familiar with this term, Groucho comes from an old-time comedian, Groucho Marx, who admittedly I have no idea who this guy actually is or what he did in the comedic world, but he would have this very low center of gravity style of run/walk that he would do around stage as a sort of parody. So lots of bend in the I'm going to use words in a second. Lots of bend in the hips, knees, and ankles, and a very squatty type of movement. And the Groucho Running article that I posted was really to kind of investigate this idea of people who are using squatty run. It centers around the idea of delayed hip extension and how this strategy can be used. But there are a lot of consequences when you use a strategy like this, right? You're going to increase your ground contact time. You're going to reduce your stride frequency. There's a number of other knock-on effects that have negative implications for what is actually fast. However, there are people on both sides of this debate, some who do use Groucho-style running, others who are adamantly opposed to it. And so this led to some great discussion in the DMs, and I knew I had to bring Mike on. We go way back. I think I met him right before the COVID quarantine. I did a workshop called Rewire with Darian Barr at his place, and since then it's just been an interesting speed journey for me. But I thought it was worth talking around this conversation, especially with some popular stuff that gets thrown out on the socials for what people are doing to enhance the development of their athletes. So listen to this podcast. We'll have some people from the other side of the discussion coming on in subsequent weeks, and I'll let you guys make the opinion yourself. But super excited to present this podcast to you. It was a great conversation, and if you're interested in speed and helping build fast athletes faster, I know you're going to love this. So take care, and without further ado, here is Mike Kozak. I think a good place to start with this, because I know this whole conversation started from us kind of going back and forth about the Shin roll and the squatty running, and I want to clarify for a lot of people, any drills or correctives or whatever you want to call them, they're generally side quests, right? They're not the main task that we're trying to accomplish. So I don't want people to get too lost in the woods, but I think something that would be helpful for me and maybe people listening is just give me the origin story for you. So just kind of your athletic background, what got you into this field. And then we'll kind of break into some of your philosophy surrounding sprint training. So I think that'll be really good for us to segue into what we want to talk about today.
Yeah, great. So, I went to school for physical education. So my background was teaching. Played tons of sports, wasn't great at late bloomer, lifted weights like anybody, but just kind of one of those things, never was taught well or anything like that. So basically, around 2001, at the onset of the internet, I picked up a medicine ball at Gold's Gym I was working out at and saw a website for jumpusa.com and found jump soles and said, you know what, I'm getting some. And me and my roommate at the time, who was also like a personal trainer, said, look, man, let's just buy a bunch of these and sell them to people and show them how to do the program. And that was SOAR. We bought jump soles, we sold them, and we did the program. It came in the thing. Probably owe some people some apology. I mean, look, kids got better, but did 14-year-olds need to have jump soles? No. It wasn't jump soles, it was the training. He, like I said, was personal trainer, said some knowledge, and we progressed patterns. Look, anything that anyone that's been around for a while has done. And then I started to read people like Mike Boyle, Joe DeFranco, Louis, all the people that anybody studies said, you know what, I don't really even know what I'm doing here. And like I said, I was also a phys ed teacher, so it was my full-time gig. We opened the gym in 2006 and had some locations. Success. I'm still here. We had success then. about 2012, I was working for the NFL side job doing NFL regional combines. If anybody was a big NFL person, if you watch the show Undrafted around 2013, I was on it for a little bit, just on the testing side. And it was about that time watching these guys. I would test jumps, all this and that. But sometimes it'd be at the 40 line and just kind of starting to watch these guys. It's like the guys that were doing the things that I value, push and extend and all this stuff. I'm like, that dude just ran a 4.8. And then I'm looking at some of these other dudes. I'm like, they're not really doing that. And this dude just ran a 4.4. So I'm not saying everybody, but it was enough for me to be like, I'm missing something. I'm missing something here, right? Whether these guys are voluntarily running like this or not, it just was my observation at the time. So fast forward a couple of years, Joel Smith, I'm sure you're familiar, Just Five Sports, great podcast. Listening to him, I started kind of picking his brain. He interviews this at Darien Bar, and I'm like, this dude is saying like different stuff. Kind of clicked an NFL thing to watch. So I asked Joe, I said, who's this dude? He goes, well, that's the guy that coaches me. And that's the guy I work on. I'm like, damn. Like, well, if you interview all these people across the world, that's the dude you're working out with. I'm flying out to Sacramento. I'm going to spend time with him. That's what I did. I contacted Darien. I said, I'm flying out. I'm immersing myself in this thing. That right there totally changed my thoughts on speed training and really our whole model in job. So if we want to get down to squat in, again, it's kind of what I said. So squatty, I think I like to say squatted because squatty has this connotation we'll run around like a duck, which I would say is too low. Yes, your ground context. Now it's hard. When you get warm and do that kind of thing, you can do it. What we deem our non-negotiables are understanding where your foot pressure is in your shoe, and then this posture we put on top of it. And that squatted posture just basically gives you some bend in the knees, sets the shins up to change angle, and sets your glutes up eccentrically to work the way you want. And then there's other mechanisms or whatever that we train. But if you don't have the foot pressure and you don't have the squatted posture, then the other things I want you to do are not going to work. And there is never a day in here we don't train them. And a good way to do it is like when I meet a kid, we assess them. I'll put them in that posture. And to be clear, that posture is you squat down. We don't want to hinge. We want to squat down. So the shin angles will change. It'll push pressure to the forefoot, right? And I'll tell kids it should be a debate in your shoe. Can I put a piece of paper under your heel or can I not? Because we don't want to be heel driven. But if you got to move laterally, you need some heel, right? Correct. And we definitely don't want to be on the toes. So slide, cue them up, put them in that posture, and I'll just let them put the hook there, right? And most kids are the greatest athletes, and you can tell they're struggling, they're burning. I said, well, what do you want to do? And they're like, stand up. I'm like, and we are going to train to not do that until you're supposed to, or until you have to jump, dive for a ball, whatever your sport task is. And that's where we really start to get rolling. So hopefully that answers at least the baseline of how I got to teaching these things, and we can move on to teaching certain things we do, or maybe even more importantly, things that we don't necessarily do anymore that I used to do.
Yeah, I think that would be important. So kind of talking about where you came from, which was this heavy extend push type of running, which to some level, I feel like it's American football or maybe the bigger, faster, stronger culture kind of has dominated a lot of strength and conditioning, right? So it's loaded sleds. We need to get these guys stronger in the gym to run faster. And I think anybody who's in the game long enough understands that you've seen some freakishly strong athletes who just really aren't that fast. I mean, they're fast relative to maybe a normal human, but to their peers and whoever's in their cohort of elite or upper level athletes, they're not really shining. And it's clear when you look across strength and conditioning practices of a lot of the international folks that max strength and big push and heavy concentric stuff does not really dominate their training the way that I feel that it does here. And so I think it'd be important to talk about early in your career, what kind of activities what kind of philosophies really dominated, and then we can kind of compare that to where you are now and what kind of things really become a highlight in terms of the technical changes that you're trying to see in these athletes.
Yeah, I mean, so for one, I mean, and no one is advocating to not be strong. You have to be strong. How strong you need to be, protect, varies. And I don't see any I think a lot of kids who mature, they're strong because they're fast. That's some of
Hmm.
Darius. You know what I mean? Now, are they going to deadlift 6 I don't know. But I've never seen a really fast 14-year-old that I'm like, oh, man, this kid's struggling to goblet squat 26 pounds. Like, it's not how it works. And sometimes they're early mature. So we still value strength. Phasic, 1x20. So I've dabbled in all those things. Still do. Still do. The push and heavy sleds, and that becomes the thing. Because push, look, we've all been taught. It's not so much that that there isn't a push. It's when is the push occurring? When is it done? And do you really voluntarily need to chase it? Because if you're voluntarily chasing it, you're late. The push already happened. That's impulse and all those things. I'm reading a book right
Hmm.
now, Force by, forgive me, I can't remember his name. He's a popular guy, but he does talk quite a bit about that. And
It's Dan
yeah,
Cleather.
yeah, Cleaver, yes, and he goes into those sort of things. He seems to be more of a math guy, but it does support a lot of that. And I don't have force plates or anything, so some people might be able to talk better on that. But the bottom line is, back then, if I'm videoing a person for side, we're trying to chase that angle that a lot of people love. But at that point, it's really all I knew. And that becomes the thing. What are the instructions? And that's what I felt I missed. I was missing the foot pressure thing. Okay, when is the push done? What do you do next? When do you do it? That's technique. And it does vary based on how long your levers are, how compressed or expanded of a person you are. And I know you're familiar with Bill Hartman and all that stuff.
Hmm.
I love that model. James Fryer, I think, who's a guy that's been on your show, is a guy that he lives down by you now, but I do refer people to James. I worked hand in hand with James, and I fully believe in that model to set us up to use the things I've learned from Adarian. I can't say I marry them together, but I know if you don't have hip extension, you don't have IR, then you can't fully get all of this squatted stuff I want you to get if you got a late stance foot or that. So right now, I'm doing all that. Back then, we're just trying to lift weights, do plyometrics. I thought plyometrics were the answer to everything. Misunderstanding of stiffness and all that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. And they're not bad. It just, again, I thought just lift weights and do those jumps and we're going to run and that's going to solve our problems. Which for an average 15-year-old kid, they're going to get better. And if you
Right.
get the right in front of you, they're going to be good despite it. And that's probably a lot of what's going on. A lot of those 99.9 percentile of athletes, they're going to be fine despite it, unless you're just totally screwing them up with volume and inappropriate conditioning, which I've never done. So to go back, even when I didn't know what I didn't know, we always had two things. I'm not going to let you lift like crap, and we're not going to just condition for the sake of making you puke and all that. It never ever was like that. Just how we taught lift and put ramps under kids' feet, all that kind of stuff that I've learned from Bill's model and James and stuff and PRI and all
Yeah.
that have influenced me. But I never let kids just get under a bar and grind weight. You know that I.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned was this great like posture, right? This long initial projection, if you will. I mean, that's a popular
Mm-hmm.
term. And one of the things I think is really easy for athletes to do is to hit that frame, hit that still shot on the first stride, right? If we're doing a 2 point start, very easy to teach an athlete how to hit those angles.
Mm-hmm.
Step 2 and 3, like it's starting to change. They're going to get into their technique. And so one of the things I know that we've really moved away from is I'm not worried about that first stride as much. Yes, we obviously don't want to come out rounded over, turtled up like we're carrying a 50-kilo backpack. I don't want them to excessively rise and extend their back and everything rises too quick. But I take a lot less stock into what that first position really looks like because it's just one frame in a series of frames that are going to follow. And I think when you talk about squatted, a lot of times I see somebody will say, "Oh, he's squatted." I'm like, "It looks pretty tall to me." And so I think one of the areas that overlaps and that we probably really agree on is that there is going to be some flexion through the system at ground contact. And I think in a lot of from a lot of perspectives, there has to be. We have to have some level of yielding. There's going to be some braking impulse early in ground contact. There has to be because that really sets us up to push at the right time, which is something I feel like you've already kind of alluded to. So why don't you walk me through what you want to see? Let's just start with acceleration just to keep it simple. Even though this we're kind of isolating all these sprint variables down to somebody who's running in a straight line, which is really never sport. But I want to hear you touch on what this squatted position means, what we're looking at in terms of the level of hip extension, how the push should happen in conjunction with the shin rotation or the shin roll. I just want to hear your perspective on all of this of just building an effective acceleration for athletes.
Right. Good question. So for one, we're going to tell kids you're either in the posture, you're getting to it. And again, that posture is that squatted position we talked about earlier. Okay. And you hit it on the head. You're not rarely are you standing still in sport. So I'll tell kids, you don't have to start there, but you got to get there. And the first direction we want to always go is down. Okay. And again, that's down into that compressed posture that sets up the things I'm about to tell you. So we want to see, like I said, shin angle. Like I said, that becomes the popular thing, the angle of the body. We want to see shin angle change. Okay? We want to see that, and you said shin roll, that's fine. It's that shin angle changes, the heel comes up with it. That makes your fulcrum point. And like I said, Darian's in the levers, a lot of people are not, whatever. Let's just say the MTP joint, the ball of the foot, becomes your anchor into the ground. And we are now moving your body weight from one side of the anchor to the other. Okay? So the shin changes, that moves the body weight over. Ideally, we want to now see the thigh rotate on top of the knee. That's thigh rotate. Okay? That's a piece that I think a lot of people miss. And that's the brilliance of a Darian find that, because I've never really heard many people talk about that. As opposed to the shin pulling backwards, the leg straightening and getting a different kind of hip extension. You understand what I mean? Now, if you get into the asymmetries and like we talk about up leg and down leg, we don't have to get into that. We can, but it does confuse people. One leg is probably going to do it more than the other. But we want to, and to be clear, I'm not taking 13, 14-year-olds and being like, your thighs got to rotate on top of your shin. I'm trying to trick them into it with crawls and things like that. And if you're like 17 and you're running for a scholarship at Ohio State or something, then we're really going to, just to be clear on that. Shin rotation, thigh rotation, when do we get the foot off the ground? So we really don't, although I'm not going to say there isn't going to be some plantar flexion, we don't want to change the lever of that foot and let the foot fully plantar flex. We want to flip that foot right up in the air and fold that leg up. That becomes the swing leg. Okay, so that becomes the thing. Shin angle change to pull the heel up. That's the when to get the foot off the ground. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then it becomes fall on the next leg to make it happen again. So you had talked about step 1, step 2, step 3. On our end, getting the shin angle change on the first step, it can be done with a false step. That's just moving the foot behind your body. That's why the false step it changes the shin angle. Or you move your body over the fulcrum point. That changes the shin angle. Either way, depends on the task. More times than not in sports, it's going to be the false step, right? Out of a shuffle, something like that. And then it comes, we want to set up that fall. Now, we don't want to fall from too high. That's overextend, too drop. But there also, we would unanimously agree, there has to be some flight time. We don't want to get caught with 2 feet on the ground. That's walking. That's not running. But then we want to make that shin angle change, the thyroid to happen on step 2, and step 3, and step 4, and step 5. And again, what do a lot of people do? They'll take that upper body and they'll start lifting. You said it. So your legs might be doing it, but your upper body's not adding that weight to that lever, that fulcrum point that you're establishing in the ground. And that would become trying to keep the abs loose, maybe. What are you doing with your arms? A lot of times arms are going to interfere more than they're going to help by cutting them down in front of you or making them too long or not adding into your body at contact ground to really compress you into that next thing. And of course, we get out. I mean, not this time of year in Ohio. We're not outside. I'm unfortunately limited to 10 to 15 yards of running. But obviously, you get up into top end speed, which for my average athlete seems to be about 22 to 28 yards, somewhere in there. The ground's going to stand you up a little bit. We're just not voluntarily trying to stand up. So I think you said it before. I don't think anyone would disagree. We're not trying to land on a fully extended knee. The thing is that's where the running tall, running squatted debate is. How tall are we trying to be? How squatted? Nobody's trying to be in a 90-degree squatted posture running at 25 yards. Like, that's great. Like, no one would advocate that. But again, a lot of these drills that I don't do anymore, like A marches and things like that, just think about what happens at ground contact. The foot hits, the heel hits, and the knee straightens, and the shin goes backwards. That's where I'm personally out on that type of drill right now, because it doesn't check the boxes of the things that we want to see. Because even at top end, there is going to be shin rotation, thigh rotation. It's just happening much, much faster. You understand what I'm saying? So that's where, what are the drills we're doing? Are they checking these boxes that I want? Okay. Thigh angle change, shin angle change, folding up, falling. Or are they negating those things, which would be stomping our feet down, standing tall, just trying to voluntarily lift our knees. Those would be things that I'm personally not doing. And I'll tell my kids, if your coach said you do high knees, but I'm not here to tell your coach not to do them, do them. Just understand we're not doing that here. And so for my athletes, who obviously, I don't know how it is, but in Cincinnati, almost every kid I train has to lift weights at school, do training at school too. They come to me extra. Well, I'm giving them something different now. You know what I'm saying? A different stimulus. I'm not beating a dead horse, whatever analogy you want to use, having them do all these other things they've already done. I'm at least giving them something different. And people keep paying us, so, seems to be working, which is the ultimate KPI. I have told parents keep paying you is the ultimate KPI in our
Absolutely
sector.
We can debate anything else. That is, you got to keep the doors open. Excuse me. Just all right. Still recovering from the sickness. I got a little bit of a cough.
And I don't know about you. 25% of my clientele has been out for 2 weeks. Just rotating.
Yeah, we've had a lot of kids drop recently. It's pretty normal. They just kind of pass it around. Okay, so I agree with this idea of the shin angle change. This has to happen. My question is, what are you looking? Do you look at, say, touchdown distance in the acceleration, right? Because I'm imagining, let's take it to one extreme. I've got this kid who's very ground-based style of running. He wants to push a really long time. He gets a lot of extension on the backside. He's going to hit, excuse me, his foot is going to land pretty far in front of his center of mass, right? And so now we're obviously, excuse me, this is killing me.
Do your thing, man. I get it.
He's going to have to roll through this ground contact and get some degree of shin angle change. You can't really push with a vertical tibia. You're going straight up. It's going to kill acceleration. I think a lot of us are going to agree on that. So when you see a kid like that, obviously we don't want that degree of shin angle change where we're just waiting for that shin to drop. So how do you approach that? Because I think traditionally people are looking at, okay, some kind of switch drill, like some A snaps or something like that. I would like to hear your take on that.
For one, we're going to get them not to push. That's the big thing. We're not going to push. And that's where I think our fundamental difference is. We're not chasing that push. We could also look at, he's not getting, you're right. We don't want that shin angle change. Again, how much of it, how to set it up. It's, again, depending on your asymmetries and how much range of motion you have allotted to you. But if that athlete is also taking his arms out in front of him and cutting it down, that's going to cut that contralateral leg to the ground before you want. So that's where we get into things where we talk about getting away from center and back to center. Away from center, back to center. And if you drop that hand down, now it just dumps you down before you want. And we're talking milliseconds. And that's another one of those techniques I learned from Adarian. We'll talk about you want to dump water on your shirt or bring the hand, pull it back tight to you. One arm might be doing it this one way, and I don't know if I'm going to be on camera for this or not, but there's going to be some offset and asymmetries you want in that arm. I wouldn't ever tell a kid to run even with their arms. Conversely, I'm not just going to force asymmetry on them either. But so one, arms could be interfering. The big thing is if this individual is a big pusher, and it's clear, I would just watch the ankle as they take off. If it is going into full plantar flexion and that shin changing back, that's not the lever we want. That's a first-class lever. What we're looking at, where the ball of the foot becomes the fulcrum point, that's a second-class lever, like a wheelbarrow, if you will. The dirt starts behind the wheel, empty the dirt, get more dirt. See what I'm saying? So for that kid, who I have a lot of, because a lot of them have been taught to push, we just start putting in a bunch of drills that get them not to push. It could be as simple like rudiment hops. I love them. We're just going to do them in the posture, and we're not going to try to push off the toes. We're literally just going to work on picking the feet off the ground. Okay, and then we would make that what we call a shin drop bunny, where the shins will move, and when you feel your heel come up, just keep flipping it up and over. So we're not trying to gain a ton of ground like a broad jump. We're trying to keep landing in the posture and let those shins turn over and feel when. You can do it with a single leg. I'll put kids on like a 3 or 6 inch box. Get them to move their body weight out ahead of the fulcrum point, and instead of stepping down, fold that leg off the box and feel that fall. And then you'll get a switch that you just talked about. But it's going to be with rotation of a swing leg instead of the knee going up and straight down, which is not it, in our opinion.
Yeah, so it sounds obviously a heavy kid, like we talked about, heavy strength. I'm always thinking they're going to be biased towards a very concentric style of force production. They want their foot in the ground so that they can push. And I've never liked that because push just sounds wrong, right? Like push. I want to hit the ground. I want to whack. And to some degree, it sounds like you are talking about more of this reactive, slightly elastic style of running that we're not relying on the muscles per se, but we're putting ourselves in positions to reflexively use a lot of this strength. And so there's two sides to this in my mind. One is some kids may not have some of the physical prerequisites, which is why we also love rudiment hops and very low level plyometric style activities, not really to build this tendon stiffness that a lot of people think about, but just about finding the rhythm and the coordination and timing of when we're contracting these muscles, how to have pre-tension when they're actually contacting the ground so that the initiation of their contact is what's actually driving them forward. And the other side, again, comes to this technical idea of what it sounds like you're doing is you're taking some of these drills that we have and putting them in a position to get a felt sense of what you want to see with this shin angle change. Is that an accurate description of where you kind of how you take this?
If you can't get the shin angle change, I can't give you the other things. It's set so. Those would be, like I said, the posture and the feet non-negotiables, then that gets a shin angle change. If I can't get you to do that. Now, look, some kids have stiffer shins. Again, that's where the assessment and how we dial you in, because everybody's when and everybody's range changes. Now, again, if you increase range, you better increase the speed you're moving through that range, or you kind of just got slower, if you think about it. So now the kid you're talking about seems to be like more of a lineman type. Is that what you're like?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's who I'm it's a hypothetical, but that's kind of who I'm imagining.
So in Bill's model, that's like a wide, and they're going to have long. That's what they're geared for. So I'm not trying to make him a springy basketball. What I have found with that type, again, I don't know this kid's range of motions and all that, but I've had a lot of kids like that by all means, they're kind of tight, compressed, they're big, they're strong, they can deadlift a house. That's where lifting the knees and all that kind of stuff, that really works against them. So those kind of kids, I'm trying to keep them close to the ground. I'll tell them to kind of run almost like they're skimming leaves, like their shin angle is going to be fast. And if you're a lineman, you don't want to leave the ground anyways. You're going to end up on your back. And then now hopefully those things get better. So instead of trying to chase stride length, I'm almost trying to get them to improve frequency. I am trying to get them to improve frequency because their stride length is killing them anyways. It's erroneous. So those dudes I've had a lot of success. Don't try to do all that. Just keep getting your feet back down to the ground and spin them. Even though they're not going to be like the road runner, we're trying to get that quality because this stand up, stomp, stretch out, for every step they take, they're stopping themselves. You know what I'm saying? And that's where I've had success. And again, the ranges. Sometimes you get a big guy that moves really well, and then, they can do all these things. But how fast are you moving through space? When we talk about shin angle change, how fast can you get your body there 7 foot? If you can't move it, if you don't move that fast in space, and then you're trying to lift your knee on the front side, you're just pulling yourself straight up in the air, which isn't it. You understand what I'm saying? So their cycle might be a smaller circle. That might be the route that I would take for a kid like that.
Okay. Now, this is making sense. I'm going to keep asking you some questions because I'm super curious about this. On the flip side, about this kid that's overstriding. When I think of some of my more elastic athletes, one of their strengths is obviously they use their air time very well to prepare for the next cycle or foot contact. And I see a number of them who can actually strike the ground with the shin fairly rotated forward anyway. So it's almost like they can start to initiate that push earlier because they're kind of landing in the shin angle change. Is that something you look for athletes, or is it something you try to modify? Do we want to have this time where we're seeing the shin roll, or if they land there, are you kind of like, hey, we're good to go?
No, I want shin angle change. Now, I will say on step 2, and again, it depends. There's asymmetries. One leg, the shin might rotate a few degrees more than the other. And that's the up leg, down leg. And again, whether you want to get into that or not, I can do my best to illustrate that to you. But no, because if the shin already lands changed, it can only go one other way, which is the other way. You know what I mean? Now, look, if you're going to jump, the shin will go down, then it'll come back. If we're trying to run, I want you to land. Now, look, shin angle change might be 3 degrees. But Darian even has this thing that was called the fat hurdle. And it was like this green and red thing of angles. And you could actually gave the kid a visual. This is where I want to land. This is where I want to go. Now, again, the degrees as you move forward is going to change. But even like step 2 is a tough one to get shin angle change. It is. The first one's free. It ain't hard to get that to happen. Things. Can you understand how to get that yield and put your body weight on that second leg and get that change? Again, how fast are you moving through space? What leg are you landing on? How much degrees of range of motion you have? Depends. But I would, if I saw, if the kid's super fast and he lands with shin angle change and he runs a 4.4, I'm leaving it alone. But that's not the average kid I'm seeing. The average kids I see doing that, they're not getting enough juice out of that stride. They're leaving something on the table. And again, it's going to be case dependent.
Okay. And then progressing from this foot contact, we see some shin angle change. We're going to be talking about this thigh rotation on top, which really seems to come down to a lot of delayed knee extension. So if you've got a very quad driven type of athlete, I would expect that knee to move backwards in space, which we don't want. That's not what we're after. We want to see it drive that hip forward. And so can you talk to me a little bit about your thought process of how to develop this in some of your younger athletes?
One easy way is to get down in a crawl position with your knees down, so all fours, if you will. We're going to leave one knee down. Now, you got to make sure the ball of the foot is in the, kids aren't doing it with their foot, planting foot. So you got to get the toes on the ground. Fold one knee into you and just work on letting that. Now the knee becomes the anchor because it's in the floor, right? And just have them in place crawl and get them to feel that thigh rotate the body. I don't know if you can visually, if I'm doing a good job of explaining that. But that's a simple. Now that doesn't mean it's going to transfer to standing up. I don't know if you follow Darren, your listeners follow Darren, like you'll see he does a ton of stuff on, we do a lot of stuff on bricks. The brick's just a stimulus for the foot to put the ball
Mm-hmm.
with the foot on. Again, that emphasizes that fulcrum point. I might put kids, let's just use a split squat for an example. We would say that back leg is in what's called a late stance, right? So
Mm-hmm.
mid stance, where your body weight's right on top of that foot, there's your squatted position. The body weight starts to move out ahead of the foot. That's late stance. I think everyone would unanimously agree with that, right? That
Mm-hmm.
at that point, that's where I'm trying to get that thigh to move forward on the knee. You could take take the brick out of the equation. You could take a big medicine ball, put it on the ground, put the knee on top of it, because that calf, that's where that calf's got to start to work isometrically, right? We might just do medicine ball throws where the ball with the knee, if you can visualize the back leg, the knee is kneeling on top of the ball. That becomes a fulcrum point. As I throw the ball, my thigh rotates forward as I move my body and the ball to the wall. Okay, that's an exercise to emphasize thigh angle change. We do some other really cool stuff with chains that are going to be really hard to discuss here. Just take a squatted lunge. So take our squatted position and you get the shin angle change, right? You can shin angle change lunge easily, right? But if that shin keeps going into the ground, you're not going to go very far, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
understanding, and again, my young kids, probably not doing this. My older kids, I want to see the shin drop. Now, before you put that leg that's in the air down, I want to see the thigh rotate forward. And it's just how you're going to gain a little bit more ground. So if you go back to your stride length question, that would be, again, that's how I'm going to get a little bit more juice out of that. And so anything I can do to, one, make sure that fulcrum point's where we want it, get the thigh to work. Now, if you don't have big toe extension, that's where the assessment comes in. If your
Yeah.
big toe, and again, too, toes, we're kind of just letting them be. If you push off your toes, the toes will kill the whole. If that big toe is clamped into the ground, that's where pushing off the big toe. That's not our jam. We're not doing that. We're trying to roll around it, okay? But if your big toe is locked up and doesn't extend, that's probably going to kill your ability to get hip extension. If you can't get hip extension, you can't get thigh rotation. So if I get a kid that doesn't have that, then we ain't really talking about thigh rotation because it's not going to be what we're robbing Peter to pay Paul or whatever analogy you want to use there.
Yeah.
So
No, this resonates with me because this stuff to me really comes out. It's easy to assess. You can see the connection. It's just the approach that you have is very unique relative to I think what is still considered pretty common practice through most of the industry. I don't want to say wrap this up because I think there's still a million questions that I want to
I got
ask, but
I got time.
yeah, but I would love to hear, just walk me through a typical training session for you. What kind of things are you doing? I want to hear how you're integrating this stuff in a really cohesive way for athletes because somebody might be listening to it. And even for myself, some of the stuff is very novel in a sense of how we're discussing it, what we're talking about, some of the terminology that we're using. But I'm sure in practice, this is very simple in terms of the application that you're actually using. So, what does a session look like? How are you setting athletes up for success throughout the warm up? And then at what point do you make some of these individual corrections for the athletes?
Great questions. So for one, I will tell you my average athlete, let's just say they're anywhere from 13 to 18 right now, and they train with me. Almost everyone's twice a week. Okay. Early in the week, our speed work is linear, and later in the week, it's multi-directional. All bets are off. Everything athletic is almost what we call it. So let's just take this week, for example. We wanted to run some five. We actually time. I don't time every week. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we do more of instruction, any of these mechanisms we talked about based. This
Hmm.
week, early in the week, last 2 days, we timed 5-yard run into a 10-yard fly. That's what our space allows. Okay. Our warm up, I like RPR. I don't live and die by it. But we used to lay kids down and breathe. That's a waste of time. So we stand them up, we do the power breaths, get some nasal breaths. I do have some kids that do some specific resets or whatever you want to call it. They could be from James Fryer. They could be just RPR or PRI stuff. I know, whatever. let's get that going. We stimulate the feet with those neuro spike balls. I think that's important. Wake
Mm-hmm.
those up. Get some RPR. This week we did like a warm-up circuit. I mean, it just had some basic, we call them posture squats. Squat down until you feel your heels about to leave, and then start folding all the way up and down. That's what we're just trying to drive some warmth, and it's cold in our facility. A warm-up this week was like doing some squatted in our posture hops with like a band, I can't remember what the bands are called, but they have handles and you kind of stand on them. So as you pull down into your squat, you pull the band in, it gives you that compression. And now we're just doing frequency hops. Those will get you warm quick. We did some kneeling walks this week where you basically walked on your knees, and what do you got to do? You got to fold that leg up to move. We did what was called dupa walks, which is an exercise that's basically said, it's kind of like a psoas exercise where you lift the leg and you're scooting on your butt. Some I found online I liked. It's easy to implement. Mm-hmm. And then, so it was like a 4 exercise rotation. The last exercise was take that posture we talked about and fold one leg into you and stand on one leg. We call that base position. Okay? And we can do, I couldn't tell you how many exercises out of base position. And depending on the age of the kid, who the kid is, all we're trying to do is get some shin angle change, understand when to fold up, and they're doing them kind of just right in place. And it just gets them getting those things going. So this week's linear warm-up was that 4 exercise rotation. We go through it twice, and then we just call it get to running. I said, I don't care if you want to skip into a run, like, I don't know what people call that, a drop-in run or something like that. You want to go shin angle change. I said, whatever makes you feel good. Today's a testing day. Get to running. It doesn't need to be full speed right now, but the end of your run better look like a run. It better be faster than how you started, right? And you start going, you'll find sometimes on the lasers, I'm like, man, this kid just PR'd and he's warming up. And then he, of course, tries to let it go and he goes slower, and that's where the individual conversation. So in this week's linear testing week, we're just auto-regulating those flies. I might pull a kid to the side and say, look, man, you started to sprint like this. Remember, you get to the posture or be in the posture. Other than that, we're not saying a whole lot. Mm-hmm. Starting today, tomorrow is our multi-directional day. Our warm-up, again, will involve that breathing stuff. We'll do jump rope in a squatted position. We'll do forward roll, the run, the back pedal. I love gymnastics type stuff for these kind of things. We'll lay on the ground. We'll do some sort of rolling vestibular system work. Maybe just a split squat just to get drives. We don't have to do everything unconventional, but something's going to check those boxes I want. And then today's going to be more of like a shuffle, the run type thing. We'll do it where like one kid has like a big Swiss ball in front of them, and you got to be in that squatted position to keep that roll. And they're kind of changing speeds. And then the person that's reacting to them is shuffling or crossover running to keep that ball in front of them. So we got one person working on the linear, one person working on the reaction. Works out pretty well. And then we might have them chase each other with pool noodles or something like that and make it a tag game. So that's what our later in the week. We might hit balloons, react to those and squat. It's really anything different, fun, without getting asinine. And then every kid in our program, I design a workout for them, aside from a youth like 12 and under group. It's like a common sense thing. So, like, I train a lot of volleyball players. I'm in a volleyball facility. I train a lot of girls pretty high level. Obviously, I tell parents all the time, I'm not getting anybody calling me that their kid jumps too high and we got to bring that shit down. Like, that's not getting that call. So we do understand vertical leap is important, but a lot of these girls are in season, a lot of clubs. So are we just doing strength? Hey, this girl really needs to jump higher. That route I found for like those girls that approach, the route is running. It's the approach. They have 2 to 3 steps to produce speed to redirect it. And I can tell you this, Ryan, I don't think learning all these things I have from a Darian have impacted me more than in the volleyball set or my boys that are trying to dunk basketball. Because if you don't understand how to go down to go up, and most of these kids just don't run well, and you only have 2 to 3 steps of opportunity to do that, I mean, we'll get girls that go up 5-6 inches pretty quick, and it's just understanding the call. I didn't know how to run. I didn't know how to fold my levers up. I didn't understand the sequence. All my coaches are telling me to take this big leap in this penultimate step. We're like, no, this is. So then we might do all those things we just talked about 20 minutes ago, and we might do them into a jump style. And that could be a volleyball player's thing. And then common sense lifting. We're squatting. We're doing. So.
That's exactly what we covered when we were at the workshop at your place. We definitely did some speed stuff, but the last thing we probably spent a majority of time on was talking about the shin drop during the penultimate step and how to translate that momentum from horizontal to vertical. And Jake Turo was there
Yeah.
for mine. And but yeah, I mean that was a huge concept that I don't think gets discussed enough. So, I mean, while we're on that, can you, because I work with a number of volleyball players too. They are in season all the time, and it's it's staggering to me how misunderstood the volleyball like approach jump is, especially with regards to how they're setting up the penultimate stride.
Yeah. So again, are you in your posture? If you're not, you got to get to it. Okay. And again, I tell these girls, what's going on in your game? Do you have to do a 3-step? Do you have to do a 4-step? A lot of times they're in what's called out of system. They got to be able to do a 2-step type. To me, we're going to rep them all. I'm not just going to look. Every now and then I'll let a girl haul off, do what everyone you jump side. But we're not going to chase that because that's not happening. So skip things like skip step into the penultimate. You know what I mean? Where they're learning how to separate their feet from the ground, and when they land, instead of starting to stand up and step, they're letting that leg on the ground and all those lever things we talked about, learn how to use that to set up the fall into the approach. Because that's the thing, a lot of these girls, boys, they don't get a fall. Let's just say they're doing most kids are right-handed, right? And their approach is going to finish left, which is the penultimate, right, left, okay? And a lot of times they're putting that right foot down before the left leg, and the left leg's still on the ground. That's walking. They just killed everything. They're not getting a fall. So anything I can do to get them to understand that. I might, a lot of times, once I get you comfortable with that 2 to 3 step and I got your sequence, and again, the up leg, down leg is going to influence that tremendously. That's where the big impact is. And I have to choose my battles as to who I want to give that information to, not to confuse them, but it matters. I might take a girl or boy, put them in that 2-leg bilateral squatted posture about a yard from the vertex and say, all right, you got a false step to get out of this. Because a lot of times that's going to happen. So the left leg, if they're right-handed, is going to go back, but you got to create that fall right away. And you got to do it without standing up, without pushing, without that left heel splatting to the ground. And that's where you learn to jump fast. Because in the game and the system, especially in like the 14, 15-year-old range where they're just not skilled, and that is happening a lot. And that is one of those things where it's like, man, my approach used to be 9 feet, taking this big 4-step run, and I just hit 9-2 with this fall step. It's like, well, you've actually now understand how to make these mechanisms work for you. And now we have this whole broad spectrum. And I mean, I like auto regulation. I can explain what it is in a nutshell if you want, but the program might be some sort of med ball throw or like reactive type squat on my super squat because I love that kind of stuff. And then we might auto regulate their volume with, you name it, approach jump, false step approach, 3-step approach, skip step approach, approach off a 3-inch box type thing. Yeah, it's kind of like the Louis Simmons West Side cycle of the thing. So it's fresh. I'm giving them a little bit, but they're only doing 1 to 2 reps at a time.
Yep.
Oh, hey, man, your top touch on this is 9.7. You're hitting 9, 5 days of 2 minutes. Yeah, all right, we're done with this. Get to your strength work or upper bio or whatever it is we're doing. Man, you're cooking it. You're right in that range. You got a tournament this weekend? No. Okay, hey, keep going. I want you to do this all day. I want you to do 7. But again, you got to ask these questions, understand what's their schedule, how they feel is going to dictate how they perform. If you're not touching within 95% of your best, I'm shutting you down.
Okay, for somebody who, let's say, wants to start to integrate some of these concepts, what are probably 1 to 3 things that they would benefit from actually removing from their program? Because I think it's always easy to continuously add to these programs, right? Program bloat and creep, and I feel like we're constantly just trying to add stuff, but what things can we remove that will actually start to improve some of the results that we're getting?
Wall drills, heavy sled marches or runs,
Mm-hmm.
anything that does not get shin angle change. It just gets shin angle stay, or the shin angle goes back and that hit, like I said. So that kind of march, wall drill, anything like that. Something we haven't talked about is what we call remove replace, which is also the cross extension reflex.
Mm-hmm.
We want you to remove a leg to fall on the swing leg. We're not trying to put the swing leg down to pick the stance leg up. And if you think about a conventional wall drill or a march or even a skip, it's the opposite. It's replace to remove. We want to replace. We want to remove, fold up to create that fall, right? That
Mm-hmm.
stumble. So anything that doesn't check that box, I'm out of to a degree. Squat and lunges and stuff. That's more of a warm-up strength row. So definitely like the wall drill, the heavy sled push, the heavy sled run. I'm not in on those. I don't A skips, whatever. You can't really do them in the posture. That's the thing. Now we will have kids do the running man, like the breakdancing move, which if you get it right, it does create the fall and the fold up and all the things we want. So I like a running man breakdance type thing. In terms of other things, we're not. I mean, look, normal strength squat stuff. We're doing all that. No big deal. I'm not saying I'm doing less. It's just the volume is dictated by need. Anything that involves pushing off the toe, I'm not here to say don't do calf raises. Obviously, kids need some calf strength. But again, that's
Mm-hmm.
a different level. So if it involves pushing off the toes, or even how are you doing an exercise? You know what I mean? So it might be like I'm not a big box jump guy, but I'm not trying to jump on high boxes. So we might do what's called like a low box jump, where all we're doing is you're starting in that posture, you're pushing your shins. Your shins will drop a little bit. As soon as you feel your heel come up, pull yourself up onto the box. Now we're jumping for speed. Like my kids last night, I had them start in the posture. They took a hop backwards without standing up. So what they do, they change their shin angles by putting their feet behind them. And what happens? You got to fall. So you got, and all I had them do is jump on a 6-inch box, but it taught them how to be fast. And it also will teach you how to fall step, which, like I said, is the same thing. It changes the shin by moving the foot. That's where the false step gets misunderstood. It just gets you running if you do it.
Yep.
So again, box jumps, regular, try to jump on a 42-inch box, whatever. I don't care. Mine. You want to do it? Do it. I'm not into it. Fast jumps onto a box? Yes. Dropping off a box and trying to land and get shin angle change? That's a great one. You know what I mean? But again, how big is the fall and all that? So those would be little variations of common exercises that we've just flipped to get something else.
No, that's perfect, Mike. So I kind of want to wrap this up by putting a nice bow on all of this, right? Because we've talked about a lot of different concepts. And so I think there are probably some universal principles that we have some agreement on. And really the difference with a lot of this just comes down to application of how you're maybe training this sprint cycle and what's happening with the legs. So in general, I think one of the biggest principles that we discussed is for guys who are maybe old school mentality, we're looking at their trajectory. I always kind of draw a line from the ankle through the knee, right? And that's kind of the direction that you're going to be applying force into the ground. We want that shin to roll so that we can actually get some application of force in this horizontal direction to progress a lot of guys. But one of the main differences that I think we discussed today is instead of attacking the ground, it's more of learning how to replace the limbs and get into a position where we have the right leverage through the foot to create the shin angle change and kind of end up in the same place. Is that kind of a fair, like big overarching take home point?
Yeah. So for one, I like to say, so instead of attack the ground, we want to interact with the ground.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so again, so just I rewind just a little bit, like ground contact times. Well, no one's advocating slow, but the fastest isn't necessarily winning the race. Okay, and that's where things like I have a jump man, 4-jump RSI. It's important, but my highest scoring 4-jump kids of all time are not my fastest runners. Okay, so interact with the ground, getting all that juice we want out. And again, you said the shin angle change. To me, shin angle change, that is the force.
Yep.
If you're trying to produce force and push past that point, you're late. Now, if you're super strong and gifted, you could probably get away with it. Now, do you have calf issues, hamstring issues? I'm not here to predict it. I'm not into any of that kind of stuff, but just think, you're changing levers, you're pushing, you might be using something more that you don't need to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the shin angle change is the force. And then, yes, they said, interact with the ground. When are we done? When to fold up. We want to fold up fast. Again, that's where, like, you talked about things I'm out on, like glute ham raises and Nordics. That's not my jam. I'm not really doing that. That's kind of something I lost a couple years ago. Not to say you shouldn't, so that it becomes thing. Not that you shouldn't be able to do them. How much of them do we need to do? Do we need to do them all the time? I don't know the answer. I just personally removed those from my programs because they just kind of stopped making sense to me from a lever standpoint. Okay.
I sense the pendulum swinging on those to a degree anyway.
A
I
lot
think
of
they
people have
were.
said, and Darian, again, Darian's a different mind. He's like 7 years ago. It's like, dude, he's like, I don't even understand. It's kind of, but if you think about it, take what we talk about. Get your body out ahead of the fulcrum point, which is the glute ham raise, right? When you're running, you're not pulling your body weight back to your feet. You're pulling your foot off the ground and folding your leg up. So again, maybe the isometric version of holding them, yes. Should you be able to demonstrate it from a strength point? Yes. Just like dropping off a 30-inch box. Should you be able to handle what is absorbing the force? Should you be able to do it? Yes. Do you need to do it to train all the time? I
Nah.
don't know. Just watch all these basketball players land. They ain't doing that. But again, those are special. Should a 14-year-old boy be able to do that? Yeah, they should. How much do we need to train? Those are the questions I'm asking myself. But to go back, I kind of drifted. Yeah, you got to get out of this box of thinking push and extend and chase and look. That's what I did. Because again, go all the way back to the story I told you, man. At the start line of the NFL, I'm watching these guys do that, who did it very well and it was clear as day, and I'm like, that is slow. That dude is not running. And this dude that looks like the road runner is running like and even in the shuttles, same thing. These guys running these pretty shuttles, 4.6. This dude is 4.09. You know what I mean? So that's just, I guess. So I guess I was lucky to be in that opportunity to be able to see that stuff firsthand.
Yeah, you got to see it at the elite level to really start to tease out some of these strategies. Because sometimes with underpowered, under prepubescent athletes, it can be hard to discriminate. Because I feel like anything you do is going to make them, to some degree, a little bit faster.
Oh, for sure. And the prepubescent. So look, and that I'm glad you brought that up, because these kids, again, I got to make you aware of what your foot pressure is. If you don't understand, and you got to not say that we know the foot needs to change shape. If you're heavily skewed one way, pronated, some of the squatted, that's going to be hard because I don't want you melting into the ground doing this stuff. So I got to, again, be judicious of where is this range, and are you even strong enough to, that's where thigh rotation, if you're not strong enough to support, you're not going to get that point. So I'm not talking to those kids about that. But again, that's just let puberty do its thing, and that's some stuff, and that's probably for another day that I've learned from some smart people.
Go outside and play, right?
Well, there is that. If I just had a conversation, call me with a 9-year-old. Go 10, I'll entertain. But it's a half-hour training. That's it. Half hour. Get out.
All right, brother. Well, if people want to find out more information about you, where can they go?
I am Instagram, Soar Fitness. I believe that's also my X handle, but my X handle, I'm not putting a ton out there. I'm probably more talking about Cleveland sports or something, finding funny stuff. So the Instagram's up there. I'm not a big presence on there. This is the first podcast I've done in a while. I don't have any products or anything like that. I kind of dabbled in that, and it's just this oversaturated market. I don't have anything like that, but by all means, anyone can reach out to me through DM, and I do consulting and online and all that.
It's all right, man. The parents pay you. That's all. That's the KPI.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's what I learned because the other thing, the money was going the other way. There was a KPI of this ain't working. So you got to be honest with yourself. So I'm in a good spot. Got a real small thing. Sounds like you're kind of doing the same deal. So
Yes, sir.
Find me.
All right, brother. Well, I appreciate it. Just hang on here so we can upload this video, and then
Yep.
we'll get it out in the next week or so. And kind of share this with the world.
I'm excited, man. I appreciate you having me on for sure.
All right, take care. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to rate and review us with 5 stars only. Then subscribe so you can get all the latest updates.